Hebrew 10.
James what?
James 1, chapter 1, verse 12. Then Romans.
Is it James 1?
James chapter 1.
Oh, James chapter 1. 1 and 12.
Yes, ma'am. I'll just kind of make sure you, yeah. Romans chapter 8, verses 26 through 28. And then the rest of the scriptures is coming out the book of Job. So you can just say the book of Job, because that's where the message is coming from.
The book.
The book of Job. Amen.
And what was the title again?
Take the limits off and receive. I just gotta get to the book of Job. There you go. I had it lined up. Alright, so the Lord gave me this message when I was going through my whole thing with my miscarriage. And I was trying to ask the Lord what was going on, but I didn't really know how to ask, because I was having so many feelings and stuff like that. So the Lord brought me to the book of Job. And, well, first he brought me to Judges, but it ultimately came to the book of Job. And we're going to start in verse 1. And I know we kind of already know about Job himself, but it was something else that the Lord was revealing me in the book of Job that made me understand from my past. And it's just something how the Lord kind of takes you back, when you're kind of going through something, to give you understanding of what has already happened. And I thank God for it, because it's something I always wondered about myself. Like, why did I do the things that I do? But the Lord had showed me here in the book of Job. So, starting at verse 1 in the book of Job, it says, "There is a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job. And that man was blameless and upright, and one who feared God and shunned evil. And 7 sons and daughters were born to him. Also his possessions were 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 female donkeys, and a very large household. So this is the man was the greatest of all the people in the east. And his sons would go and feast in their houses, each on his appointed day, and would send an invite to their sisters to eat and drink with them. So it was when the days of feasting had run their course that Job would send and sanctify them. He would rise early in the morning and offer burnt offerings according to the number of them all. So Job said, "It may be that my sons have sinned and cursed God in their hearts." Thus Job did regularly. So here, it's giving you the backstory on him, showing how he is and his whole possessions the Lord had blessed him with. But the one thing that kind of caught my attention at the end of this verse, in these verses, was when he said that when his children, had ate and drinking, with one another, and they was feasting, that Job would sin and sanctify them, and he would rise early in the morning and burn offerings according to all of them. So he burnt offerings according to all of his children, which was something that I never caught when I read it at first, or maybe I just didn't realize it. But he went on behalf of his children. He was an intercessor for his kids, even when they wasn't even thinking about God. So this really, shows even the more the love of God that Job has for the Lord. That he even went on behalf of his children. And that was a lot of kids that he's had, and he went on behalf of them. Then in verse 6 it says, "Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. And the Lord said to Satan, 'From where do you come from?' So Satan answered the Lord and said, 'From going to and fro on the earth, and from walking back and forth on it.' Then the Lord said to Satan, 'Have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man who fears God and shuns evil?' So Satan answered the Lord and said, 'Does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not made a hedge around him, around his household, around all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in land. But now stretch your hand and touch all that he has, and he will surely curse you to your face. And the Lord said to Satan, behold, all that he has is your power, only do not lay a hand on his person, which is his soul. So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. So here, it goes back to, it's kind of setting the story for what's about to happen to Job. And Satan came to the Lord, as you've seen in Scripture, and he was asking him, going back trying to find somebody to torment, to disrupt, because that's what he do. He's a disruptor. He's an accuser of the brethren. He comes to steal, kill, and destroy. That's what the devil does in our lives. So he comes to the Lord, and the Lord presented Job up to him. And I was just sitting here thinking about my life, like, different situation that goes on in our lives. We don't know what happens, like, before it hits us. You know what I mean? Because everything is filtered through the hands of the Lord. So then, reading this and then thinking about, the situation that happened for the Lord to give me this, and then even situations before that, like what took place, with Satan and the Lord. But just hearing this, like, the Lord has so much confidence in Job that this is my statement right here. Just imagine about the stuff that the Lord puts us through. What is the Lord saying about us? He has confidence, for the most part. Like, if we are victorious on it, the Lord was like, this is my servant, Sister Vicky. This is my servant, Prophet Vernell. This is my servant, Prophet Corey, Prophet Aisha. They're not going to, shame me. But they're going to press into me and going to come out victorious. You know what I mean? Because we don't know. It's always, like on yesterday, I was talking to this lady at work, and she was saying that it was a lot of lack of communication within our agency. And she was saying that she was always the last person to know. And it's like with this, we're the last person to know as well. If the Lord presents us up, the Lord presents us up, to be tested, because it's all for His glory and it's all to strengthen us. But when we're going through it, man, for the most part, we focus on the situation. At least I was in the beginning, when everything hit the fan. So in verse 13, it says, now there was a day when his sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house. And the messenger came to Job, saying, the oxen were plowed, and the donkeys speeding behind them. When the Sabians raided them and took them away, indeed they have killed the servants with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you. So this one was when everything started to hit the fan in Job's life. First, the oxen and his servants were killed, and the oxen was raided. So they were stowed away from him. And then the next verse, in verse 16, it says that his sheep and his servants, his sheep were the fire of hell had came and burnt up his sheep, and then his servants were killed. And then in verse 17, the camels and the servants were killed, and then the camels are raided again, but it was from a different area of what was around him. They came and took all his camel. And then in verse 18, it says that his sons and daughters were all killed, and they was all killed at the same time. And the one thing that the Lord was showing me with this, that like all his help, all the stuff that could have been like a way from him to reach out, in different avenues, were all taken away from him, and it was only him and God. That's the way the Lord has shown me. It could be a whole bunch of different interpretations of it, of what was going on, but it was like, the Lord wants us to be in a deeper place with Him. We really don't know. Well, if you seek God and ask, then you can find out. But in Job's case, he didn't find out. The Lord didn't even tell him what was going on with him. But with the Lord wants to take us to a deeper place in Him. He wants us to get to the place that, we have peace, and that we know that the joy of the Lord is our strength. All these scriptures that have power and meaning, that a lot of the people of God within the Word has spoken, has written in the Word. It has power because of the trials and tribulations they went through. They really seek God even the more. And when you don't have any avenues of help, he didn't have any of his cattle and none of his stuff. He lost all his children and everything like that. And I know what I have done before is that you just kind of get into a pity party. But Job, he didn't. In verse 20 says, Then Job arose and tore his robe and shaved his head, and he fell to the ground and he worshipped. He worshipped the Lord in the midst of all these things going on with him. He worshipped the Lord. Now this is, going back to the title, Take the Limits Off and Receive. You know, when a person, well, I know myself, when I was going through what I was going through at first, my mind was really like in a state of shock. Like I didn't really know how to take what was going on, and I was really going back from when I had first fell into sexual sin, and I thought I was gonna have a baby and everything like that, and coming to find out I had took something that aborted the kid, and I didn't know. So I had this little black cloud that the devil would try to throw at me all the time, like saying you went against the word and you murdered a baby that could have been here and everything like that. And so that was something that I had to bind up and I had to come against the enemy with, because that's not what it was. Coming to find out, it never was what I thought it was. I didn't abort the baby or nothing like that. It just, that's what the enemy was trying to do, trying to play in my head, and I almost bought into it. But I thank God for bringing me out of the sexual sin and bringing me into clarity. Is when I really started finding out what was going on. So when everything started, when I found out the news, I was like, Lord, I thought I did it right. You know what I mean? You just kind of sit there, and I was just sitting there. And I was like, man, I really thought I did it right. I wasn't out of your will. I was married and everything like that. I'm like, what happened? But I didn't want to get into a place where I've been before, where I sat there and I was just like in a super low pity party. And man, it seemed like that I wouldn't even get up out of it, because I was just so down in the dumps. I was no good to nobody. I was a lot of misery. And so I knew I didn't want to go there, but when I was sitting there and the doctor was talking and everything like that, and the only thing I heard was, who report will you believe? And so I'm sitting there like, still shocked, still just looking, and I'm hearing what he's saying, and I'm sitting here just like, I didn't have nothing, it's just like I was there, like I didn't have no kind of reaction. I'm just like, okay. And then when he finished what he said, he walked out, and I got up because I started feeling like, everything like just settled, and I kind of understood what he was saying now. And I just went in the bathroom and I just crying, and I just kept crying, and like for a little bit I was crying. I'm like, I don't understand why I'm crying, because I just heard the Lord say, who report should you believe? And I'm sitting here crying, so it means that I was believing in what man was saying. But it's like I couldn't stop crying. And then my husband came, and it just like, it was a constant thing. But then a couple days later, I was sitting in the bed, and I was just sitting there, and I was in better spirits then, because I finally stopped crying. And I asked the Lord, and he was saying that what happened wasn't meant to harm me. He said, I allowed it to happen for you to strengthen you and to draw you closer to me. And that's what happened. Because the fact that I knew from my past experience, because I understood even more, like when I used to hear over the pulpit, growing up in the church, they was like, the things that you go through, you don't want to forget them, but you don't want to remember the pain with it. Because when you remember the pain, it kind of puts you at a halt state, and you don't want to go through with it if you remember the pain. But you want to always remember the things that you go through. And going through this situation, and the Lord kind of took me back. I seen that the stuff that I went through, it was a reminder for me not to go back to it. And I thank God for that, because, when the Lord had told me this, and I seen what happened, because I was reading my word and I was getting into it, and I began to worship God, just like Job did in the midst of it. And that's the thing that, some of us, and like I only can speak about myself, that I made mistakes in, that I didn't worship God in the midst of stuff that was going on in my life that I didn't understand. Like I just began to get in my own feelings, but you can't get in your own feelings when things hit the fan, because your feelings is going to get you in a deeper hole. And that's all that it kept doing. But it was like I would keep hitting the brick wall, and do the same thing over and over again. And that's what people call, that is insane. That's insanity. I'm sitting here trying to go through stuff over and over again and thinking I'm going to get a different result, but it was the same thing over and over and over again. And I would just keep going in this little circle, and this little circle, and little circle, but you can't grow from the circle. And those limits that came up in the circle, you can't receive what the Lord was saying. Like, as I was going in the circle, like before I got to where I was at now, I couldn't hear God. I couldn't see clearly. I was making a lot of mistakes, and I was getting confused, and all these things the enemy was throwing on me, and I was just entertaining it and going in a circle, entertaining and going in a circle like a carousel. Just, having, I guess my flesh was having fun on it as it was going up and down and going around. I'm sitting there waving at the imps and stuff like that because that's all that was going on in my life. I was going in a circle, in a circle, in a circle. But the Lord is not getting glory out of that. I'm not growing. None of that was going on. But just like here in verse 20 of Job, he fell to the ground and he worshiped the Lord. When things hit the fan, we got to worship the Lord. And the Lord can give us strength. And that's what the Lord did for him. He gave him strength. And like going down in verse 21, it said, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I shall return there. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken it away. Blessed the name of the Lord. And in this Job did not sin nor charge God with wrong. Oh, we got to go back to that again. 22, and in this Job did not sin nor charge God with wrong. That's where I have messed up so many times that I'll fall into sin. I'll be like, well, I guess it's not going to happen. Let's go back. Now, that's the wrong mindset. And I'm sure if you think about it in your life, you can see that maybe you too have done that. Or maybe you did get the clarity of strength that I had in a couple times in my life that I didn't see. And I was like, okay, I'm pressing to God. I'm gonna find out what it is. But the thing is, it's not the strength in yourself, it's the strength in the Lord. You can't do it alone. Just like Prophet Corey was talking about this morning about the invisible war, and he was talking about the strength of the Lord. Like, it's not in our might that we can do anything, but it's only in the Lord's might that we can do all things in Christ who strengthens us. Because if we try to do it, we just mess it up. And you just think about in your life how many times have you tried to put your hand to something. And it just remind me of this quote that Prophet Jessica Rao had put on there. I'm probably not going to say it right, but it was saying that all that her hands had possessed, she lost. But when she put everything in the hands of the Lord, she gained it all. And that's the thing that, we have to do. And sometimes, that's what I was saying with the surrender and all, sometimes it can be the hardest thing to do because we want to control everything that we see. We want to make the situation as best as we can, to our likings because, that's just what we do. We go to our job and we have different things we got to do. We know what to do, what not to do. We know how to, things have to handle and go through. And it's something like in our lives when we give it to the Lord, that's something that we can't even manage. We can't say, okay, we got to go here and do that. That's all in the workings of the Lord has for our lives. And that's like what we have to understand. Like, we have to constantly, at least I know I do, if nobody else do, I go, it's in the hands of the Lord. I can't do nothing about it. My life is not my own. When I came to Christ and I became saved and, I surrendered, all the things that I had from my past and even stuff that comes up throughout my life, I have to constantly surrender to the Lord because them things right there just constantly try to put me in bondage and I want to be free. I can't really worship and I can't go forth in the Lord I want to because even like on today, I was getting nervous on today. And my flesh was like, you don't need to get up there. Ain't nobody here. You don't need to get up there. Nobody want to hear you. Like, all this stuff was coming in my head, and I'm sitting there like, I bind you in the name of Jesus. Because I don't want whatever the Lord, or whatever, I want what the Lord said. Whatever Satan is trying to hit at me on every side, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to entertain that. I don't want to entertain it anymore, in my life anymore. I just want to be able to focus on Lord. And that's what I've been hearing a lot in this house, that we just got to focus on the Lord. It's a lot of, looking to the left and the right, but looking right directly in front of us. That's where the Lord is at. But we kind of sway and look everywhere else. But if you just keep your eyes on the Lord, and you just constantly just moving to this word. It don't matter who is to the left, to the right. It don't matter how long they've been there, if they just got there. It don't matter, none of that. Only thing that matters is that our eyes on the Lord and that we can just push through. That's what matters. And that's the thing that the Lord has really just been like telling me, like, you just gotta focus on me. Like, he was telling me, he gave me a word, and he was like pressing to me like never before. So I want and I need to show you some of the mysteries that I want you to know to go to the next level. And he was saying, I've called and chosen you to go higher. Press into me and you see a change. And that's the whole thing, that as we press, we see a change. Just like the whole thing that's happened in my life with this miscarriage, I'm not the same person I was anymore. I feel different. I may not look different, but I feel different. I know that I'm not the same Aisha anymore because I feel so much. I see God in a different way now than I did 3 weeks ago, and I really do, and I thank God for it. And that's the thing that Job is showing in his life right here, that he worships the Lord, and that's the one thing make a mental note that when stuff happens, I gotta worship God. Like, I know that you always said, Sister Vicky, that, when you get all sad and down and dumb, you'll listen to your music that you recorded here. But the worship, that's what brings stuff out. That's what for you to cry out and tell the Lord, take it, that I need help. You got to cry out to the Lord, because if you don't cry out to the Lord, nothing's going to change, because you still have to open up your mouth. Just like all of us, we got to open up our mouth and tell the Lord, cry out to the Lord. I remember it was a sister in church. She had lost her, I guess she was like adopted daughter. She had lost her adopted daughter, to her mom, and she went to the church and she was crying out to the Lord. Just crying out, to nobody else. All those feelings that she had and stuff like that. You just can't go to everybody expressing your feelings like that. You just got to go to the Lord and just cry out to him, because whatever you say to the Lord and everything like that, he'll mend that, he'll fix that, he'll make it better. And I just thank God for that. Going in chapter 2 of Job, it says, again, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also among them to present himself before the Lord. And the Lord said to Satan, where do you come from? Satan answered to the Lord and said, from going to and fro on the earth, and from walking back and forth on it. Then the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? And there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, who fears God and shuns evil. And still he holds fast his integrity, although you incited me against him to destroy him without cause. And it's the thing that kind of like, what? Kind of got me when I read this, because this is the second time the Lord is like, have you not considered my servant Job? Have you not considered my servant Job? The second time, and it hasn't even been like, you would think that it'd be like down the line, but it was the first chapter he said it, things started hitting the fan just like that. Second chapter, boom. He said it again, what's going to happen? His health's going to be attacked now. So now he lost all his cattle, he lost his servants, he lost his children, and he worshiped God, and the Lord strengthened him. And now he was getting prepared to go through something else, because the Lord offered him up to Satan again and said, have you tried my servant Job? Second time. So now, in verse 4, so Satan answered the Lord and said, skin for skin. Yes, all that the man has he will give for his life, but stretch out your hand now and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will surely curse you to your face. And the Lord said to Satan, behold, he is in your hand, but spare his life. So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and struck Job with painful boils from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head. And he took from himself a potsherd with which to scrape himself while he sat in the midst of the ashes. Then his wife said to him, do you still hold fast to your integrity? Curse God and die. So, on top of all of that, now his wife is telling him to curse God and die. Now, what the Lord was showing me, all this turmoil that was around Job and everything, and to get to the limits and stuff like that. You know, you have a lot of things going around you. You have a lot of things going on in your mind. You know, you may be boisterous or you may not. But, you know, you have that anger, maybe some confusion going on, some frustration. You know, you hurt, you have some agony. You know, you miserable. You know, you got all these different feelings that come up that are little spirits that come and try to attack you, try to cause you to get into a deeper slump or whatever they can do to not let you come up out of it. This is what is around you. And them are the limits that the Lord was telling me about. I had wrote down what limits are. Limits are boundaries. You know, they limit us from going here or going there like the city limits. You know, it only goes for so far. You know, the limits for the road, you know, it's only for, you know, a certain speed, but these are limits that, you know, you can't go to certain places or, you know, can't go certain speeds. But when we go into different turmoils like that, these limits try to come upon us, try to keep us from, you know, pressing into God or, you know, or going to the place that the Lord wants us to go. These are the limits. So he had all this stuff around him, and now his own spouse was saying, just curse God and die. You know, and in all of it, you know, Job doesn't even know what was the whole point of what was going on with him. And even, you know, his spouse didn't know, and then coming up in verse 11, his friends are going to come. They're going to let him know a little something. So in verse 11 it says, now when Job's 3 friends heard of all the adversity that had come upon him, each one came from his own place. Eliphaz, the Temanite, Bildad, the Shuhite, and Zophar, the Naamathite. For they had made an appointment together to come and mourn with him, to comfort him. And when they had raised their eyes from afar and did not recognize him, they lifted their voices and wept. And each one tore his robe and sprinkled dust on his head toward heaven. So they sat down with him on the ground 7 days and 7 nights. And no one spoke a word to him, for they saw that his grief was very great. And another thing in this that jumped out on me was the 7. 7 days and 7 nights. So I looked up the number 7, and it said it was, the number 7 spiritually is complete. I gotta find it. I know I wrote it down. But it's for it to be in complete. Complete and perfectness is the number 7. Yeah, complete and perfectness. Yep, completeness and perfection. 7. And because when I read it before, I was like, well, long ago when I read it, it didn't jump out at me. But this time it did. So for them to pray 7 days and 7 nights, it was completeness and perfection in the spiritual when it comes to numbers. And then after that 7th day, that's when things started to happen. And the one thing that the Lord was showing me in here about his friends, like right after, you know, the 7th day said, like, Job started to curse the day that he died, you know, stuff like that. And I was reading in my footnotes that he was close to blasphemy. You know, we get upset and stuff like that. You know, sometimes we can say stuff and we just added our feelings. Like, if you just think about, like, him even saying that, like, he was saying all the stuff that, you know, the Lord bring them here and doing all that, like, it wasn't cool. But, you know, he was just really in a sorrowful state. He was really, you know, hurting and agony, and he really didn't know. So you just, okay, well, just take me. You know, you just gonna give me, just take me. I don't want to be here. And I know, and if there was times in my life, like when I was in high school and stuff like that, and I was living with my parents were on drugs and everything, I was just like, just take me. I don't even want to be here. Just come on. Because it was either, like what was playing on in my head was either like, the Lord take me, or I'm going to take myself up out of here. Because it was so many times that I plotted against my own self to take my own life just because I didn't understand what was going on. But now since I'm older and I'm, you know, a little bit more mature in the Lord, then I know that it was just to strengthen my testimony. You know, to be able to touch and tell a convincing story to somebody else who has been in a drug addicted families, or that's dealing with drugs or whatever like that. I may not know the drug aspect of it because I myself did not do drugs, but I seen it. It really hurts when you see your loved one in it. Like the other day, I was talking to one of my coworkers. She was training me for this I guess it's a new position that I'll be kind of stepping into. And we were just talking, and she was telling me that she used to be like really bad on drugs, stuff like that. And she was telling me about her parents, that they're pastors and stuff like that. And I was just really just listening to it, and I was like, yeah, I can understand, the whole drug aspect of it, how it could have hurt your parents, because the fact, they love you, they want to support you and stuff like that. And she's like, yeah. And it even kind of came back even before that. We was talking about, not living in the same house with people and everything like that. I mean, I myself haven't, but I have been in a fornicating state, and I know what that is. And it's just something, when you meet different people and the things that you've been through, and it kind of come up in conversation that, instead of it being for something that was shameful and hurtful and stuff like that, it actually gave God the glory. God the glory out of all of that, because if you did not go through that, this person you came down the line with months later, years later, and they started dealing with this stuff, you wouldn't be able to testify to them. You wouldn't be able to help strengthen them. You wouldn't be able to tell the Lord tell the people what the Lord has done in your life. So everything that happens, I always say that everything happens for a reason that goes on in my life. And I pray that, you all think about that too. Because, some of the stuff that happened, you can be like, you can just walk away and stuff like that because you don't want to deal with it. But, we just got to know that everything happens for a reason. But I want to get back into Job with, him expressing his feelings like that. And then, like, right after he expressed his feelings about his birth and everything like that, here comes one of his friends. And one thing that I didn't know about his friends, that they was all older than him. I didn't even know that. And they were all considered wise men. I thought that was such a kicker, because the fact that they was wise, but they was so foolish in the stuff that they was talking to Job, because they didn't even understand. But because they are considered wise men, they just went ahead and just said what they was going to say to Job and just spoke death on him. Continued speaking death on him in the midst of everything. And the first one was Eliphaz. And it said in chapter 4, it says, "And Eliphaz the Temanite answered and said, If one attempts a word with you, will you become weary? But who can withhold himself from speaking? Surely you have instructed many, you have strengthened weak hands. Your words have upheld him who was stumbling, and you have strengthened the feeble knees. But now it comes upon you, you are weary. It touches you, and you are troubled. Is not your reverence, your confidence, and the integrity of your ways your hope? Remember now, whoever perishes being innocent, or where were the upright ever cut off? Even if I have seen those who plowed iniquity and sowed trouble, we reap the same. By the blast of God they perish, and by the breath of his anger they were consumed." So right here, he's sitting here talking about all the things that he's done for other people, and he saying that you reap what you sow. You reap this, and now you sowing all this. That's why you lost everything. That's why you in the way you are. He makes a lot of sense. We know from the word that when a person steps outside the will of God, they go into judgment. They do be punished for those things. So he makes sense in that manner, but in this manner with Job, he was just off key. He just didn't know. He just wanted to say, how some people just come, they try to come to your life and just try to tell you something just because they can, just because they feel like they know it because of whatever reason. And this was one of the things that, Eliphaz, that he did. And even the thing that kind of, that even got me was in verse 14. he was saying that fear came upon me. No, let's go to 12. It said, now a word was secretly brought to me. Ooh. And my ear received a whisper of it. The disquieting thoughts from the visions of the night when deep sleep falls on man. Fear came upon me in trembling, which made all my bones shake. The spirit passed before my face. The hair of my body stood up, and it stood still, but I could not discern its appearance. A form was before my eyes. There was silence, and a voice. Then I heard a voice saying, can a mortal be more righteous than God? Did y'all catch that? A spirit came to Eliphaz. At first, the spirit passed before my face, and he said the hair on my body stood up. That should be like a ding, 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 showing that wasn't a good spirit anyway. If the Spirit of God comes upon you, you don't get scared, do you? It should be peace. It should be tranquil. Right there, this is a man of wisdom. We got to go back. This is a man. He was the oldest of the men that I read in my footnote. He was the oldest. That's why he went first in talking. But he had an encounter with a spirit, and his hair stood up, and he still spoke whatever the spirit said. So that shows you the lack of wisdom. It doesn't matter how old you are. No matter, look, that was the one thing they used to always get me. I thought that all older people, excuse me, no disrespect, all older people were wise. I always thought that. But then I never look at the situations in my life that some older people are just as foolish as children. Because the fact that whatever they went through in their lives, they did not obtain the wisdom. They just went through the experience. And that's not the way it should be. When you go through something, you should gather something. Got to get your tools from this experience and take it along with you. Because those tools was taught for a reason. Just like with Job, with him going through what he was going through, and they took, all his family had died, all his cattle and everything was gone, all these things that happened to him, all those things happened for a reason. These are the tools that he was picking up, through it for him to go to wherever he's going. But these are the tools that we should pick up as we're going forth. Amen?
Amen.
So, this man of wisdom had came to him and was speaking off a spirit that spooked him out. And then it says, but I could not discern his appearance. If a spirit comes to you, it spooks you out, and you can't even discern what it is, don't speak what it says to you, because that is the spirit of the devil. That's not something that you want to speak to somebody else. It's just the enemy trying to come against you and cause you more turmoil. Amen? Then it says, a form was brought before my eyes. There was silence, and then I heard a voice saying, can a mortal be more righteous than God? When he said that, it made me think about in the book of Genesis when the serpent had came against Eve. Well, it came and spoke to Eve. It said that. And he said something similar to this. Like he started to switch her words. Well, switch the words that she said about what the Lord had told her about not eating from the tree of life. He switched it around and was saying that, it was okay in the matter of speaking. And now this spirit had came to Eliphaz and said, can a mortal be more righteous than a man? That's just something, And then he spoke it to Job in the midst of all the stuff that he was going through. And then it said, can a man be more pure than his maker? And it's crazy that he said that, because Job never said that in the midst of none of that. Like, I was more pure. And he just got through cursing the day that he died. He died. He just got through cursing the day that he was born. And then he was saying, can a man be more pure than his maker? Like, where did this come from? Like, this is, you can see, looking at this is what the enemy is, trying to get in Job's head. He's already gone through this stuff. You really, when a person is going through stuff, sometimes you're not thinking clear. You sitting here trying to get your ground, because underneath you, everything is all shaky and everything like that. And you're trying to get in a place of clarity, because you want to understand, like, okay, what happened? Did I do something? What I got to do to get it right? Just the whole thing that happened with me as well. I was like, Lord, what happened? And he let me know. But this spirit is trying to come and just cause confusion in the life of Job. Then it says, if he puts no trust in his servants, if he charges his angels with error, how much more those who dwell in houses of clay? It just reminds me so much of Genesis with Eve. That he just trying to come into the mind of Eliphaz to get into Job's mind and cause disrupted and to cause another form of sin, because it said back in in chapter 1 that when he lost all the cattle, the oxen, all his servants died, his children died, that he just fell on his face and he worshipped God. And then in verse 22 it said, in all this Job did not sin nor charge God with wrong. So now in chapter 4, the enemy is trying to, get in the midst of it so that what Job did in chapter 1, it can change going on. Because if you read the book of Job, or if you haven't, it's 42 chapters in Job. But a lot of stuff happened in the midst of all this. And we're talking about taking the limits off and receive. Receive what the Lord has for us. Receiving what the Lord has for us. So, in chapter 5, Eliphaz is still going on. And then in chapter 6, Job responded. And what I had counted up was how his friends was coming against him. It was 9 chapters that his friends was coming against him. And that's a lot to be dealing with. But like in the midst of that, Job kept pressing into God. He kept calling and talking to God and, trying to, handle whatever's going on with his friends, just threw on him and everything like that. But he was just trying to handle the situation. And it just kind of made me think about the dream I had a long time ago that I had shared in Sunday school this morning. That I think I was in a hospital. I'm not really sure if it was a hospital or it was a house, like huge house. But while I was there, it was like a whole bunch of people that was being slaughtered. And it was like this room I had walked by and you seen like dead bodies and everything like that. And it was dark in there. So I'm sitting here trying to run and trying to hide because it's big. I don't know what it was, but it was just something big and I know it was going to kill me. So I was trying to go the other way and I was hiding. And I could see its shadow and everything like that. And then it kind of found where I was at. And it like grabbed me and I woke up. But like the thing that the Lord had showed me on today was that the people that were slaughtered, they had peace. Because us being in the Lord and everything like that, the battle is not ours anymore, it's the Lord's. Vengeance is the Lord's. When stuff comes against us, we don't come against it too. We pray. We do what Job did, is that we fell on the ground, we worship God. We call forth and we ask God for strength in the midst of whatever's going on, that we don't be in our flesh, but that the Lord will be able to work through us in the way He needs to. Because when we try to work in our flesh, we just mess it up. We just get in a deeper dump. And sometimes it just seems like we ain't going to make it out of it. And in a sense, it can make it longer. Like, what I'm learning is that, like, when different trials and tribulations come, it comes to strengthen us and try to show us something. But if it comes and it hits and we don't handle it very well, there's going to be a repeat factor. And it's going to keep coming until you conquer whatever you need to conquer out of and get what the Lord is trying to give you. Because one thing God wants to do is to build you up so that you can grow, so you can be able to help somebody else, so you can be able to exhort him. So all these things can happen, but if we are in our flesh and we're not trying to submit to the will of God, we're going to constantly be going to the circle. Just constantly going in a circle. And that's what I was saying in the beginning when I first started, that when I first came into God, it's like I was going into this circle all the time. And it's because a lot of it was I let my flesh run the game instead of let God run it. Because, I was fearful. I was fearful of letting go because of different hurts that have happened in my past. I was fearful that, something was going to, disappointments, because I had a lot of disappointments in my life. I was thinking stuff like that was going to happen, but when I got into the Word and I started to really seek God, I seen that, God doesn't disappoint. God is love. He has a wrathful side, but that's just like, our parents. Well, my mom wasn't really like that, but when she did become like that, well, like when you step out, they supposed to, get you right. They're supposed to set you right. And that's the whole thing, how God is and how He's supposed to be in our lives. Like if we step out, we do something wrong, we got to get chastised to get right. To be able to, stand up right and do what we're supposed to do. But if we're not hearing and we in our own self, we're not going to hear. We're not going to be able to make it there. And then when things hit the fan, like with Job, which I really was so, it really just touched me. And I really just thank God for me going through this situation. And I did worship God. Was that, like, if he didn't worship God and he just went in his own way, like, what would have happened? He could have fell dead and went straight to hell. Because of the fact that he didn't heed to the word of God. Because, we don't know what's going to happen from day to day, minute to minute. We could be sitting right here in the household of faith and we just die. Like, we just don't know. But, sometimes we have this mindset like, I'm going to live forever. Ain't nothing going to happen to me. As long as I handle mine, like, I'm going to be okay. But it's not like that. Like, there's a higher power, which is God, that controls everything. Even if we try to control it, it still can't even be controlled by us because he has a bigger hand than we do. Amen. And that's the whole thing. That it's just something, getting into Job that, he understood that. He understood that, he couldn't do it without God. Even though his friends had tried to come in there and they were supposed to be of wise men, they wasn't very wise in their sayings. Amen. Amen. All right. So then in chapter 7, Job is still talking about his suffering and, all the things that are going through it. And in chapter 8, he got another wise friend. Because what I found out about his 3 wise friends that I didn't know at first, but they was wise. And it's just something, they was wise, but yet they were still foolish. And that's why, like,